Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 735 of the Lambcast. I'm your host, Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. This week, we're going internal, plunging into the depths of emotional turmoil. If you've been a teenager, you know how it's going to go, and frankly, it won't be pretty. That's right, this week's show features the sequel to 2015's Pixar hit, Inside Out. Riley is turning 13 when the puberty button is about to be pushed. As usual, big changes and problems all seem to happen at once, and when you're making a movie, that's pretty convenient. As of the time of this recording, Inside Out is the first $100 million breakout film of the year, reaching the heights of box office heaven that the studios look for in their blockbusters, but they've been denied so far this year. Disney Pixar will be sleeping soundly this coming week, knowing that their plans have paid off, at least financially. What we're here to talk about is whether or not they've paid off artistically. My guests this week are a bundle of insecurities, confidence, frustration, and amusement. You see, we've discovered that there are a lot of emotions, a lot more than the 5 basic ones that have made up the main characters of these films, and we're going to make sure that they get a chance to play a role in today's show. Our first guest is a bundle of nerves, from excitement rather than anxiety, because she knows how much fun we have here on the Lambcast. Welcome, Rachel Wagner.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
Glad to have you. Our next guest is going to be clearly identifiable. Let's face it, when your blog site is titled Mad Lab Post, you may have some anger issues. Either that or you're nuts. Nicole Ayers, I assume somehow you've managed that anger.
I have, with lots and lots of alcohol. And movies like Inside Out.
Well, there you are. There you are. And at some point or other, we may be joined by Damien Riley, who's expected to be on the show, but may have been held up for some reason. We're not quite sure what's going on. Here's the setup. Teenager Riley's mind headquarters is undergoing a sudden demolition to make room for something entirely unexpected. New emotions. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, who've been running a successful operation by all accounts, aren't sure how to feel when anxiety shows up, and it looks like she's not alone. So we're going to start with our general thoughts on the film, and then we'll go into some talking points that you guys have and a few that I have as well. So Rachel, let's start with you. What did you think of Inside Out 2?
You know, it was honestly better than I expected. I was nervous the marketing didn't really sell it for me. And I still have my issues with some of the choices that they made, but overall, I do think it worked as a story about, particularly about friendships and how, in that age of how important friendships are and how, you kind of cycle through friends and how that does cause anxiety and frustration, and captured that aspect, I think, of being a teen really well. And I think the whole movie kind of hinges to me on the moment when Joy realizes that maybe Riley's just not going to be feeling as much joy the older she gets. I thought that was like a really key moment, and her figuring out this new sense of self, I think was really good, and also not throwing the bad memories out like she does at the beginning. She kind of learned. So I think those arcs worked really well, and it was funny. It was funny, and that helped a lot as well.
It always helps when you're laughing at the jokes and things are amusing. When they fall flat, then you go, oh, no, now I have to pay attention to all the stuff that isn't working. But I think it's easier to enjoy something when there are a lot of things that work, even though there are occasionally things that don't work, which we will be talking about. Right. Nicole, did it generally work for you?
Well, yes, in parts. And I say that because I went to see the first movie when it came out with my niece, and I thought it was, one of the cutest things that I ever saw, and I rewatched it to prepare for the sequel here, and just so that I can get like a refresher, and it still, did a great job in making me smile and laugh, and I felt really good. Unfortunately, going to see the second one left much to be desired, and it's not because of the movie. It is because AMC's Fashion District location. So I only saw a portion of the movie. I paid over 30, which I'll be happy to, discuss when we get later on into the podcast. I do have some thoughts about different aspects of the sequel that I saw this weekend that I enjoyed, and some that I wish were a little different, and some new surprises that I thought were interesting. But I went in for a 4:15 p.m. show, and I left out around 7:20 p.m. after waiting in line for a refund and still having not seen the entire movie. I spent around 3 hours at AMC this weekend to watch this movie, and I'll just sum it up as the gentleman sitting in the row in front of me said, "This is the longest movie in the history of Disney movies." And I think that is so true, and unfortunately, it's not because of Inside Out 2. It's because of AMC, which I'll add to. But the parts that I like, I do have some thoughts about that. So at 4:15 p.m., I went in to get seated around 4 o'clock. After buying a ticket for around $22 and some change, the movie started, and the scene. So I'll say, since we haven't put down the spoiler wall, after the introduction of those new emotions, and joy is in, like, they're in that vault, like those walls, right, that area where all of Riley's old memories are. There was a fire alarm pulled in the facility that I'm in now. The Fashion District, for those that are not familiar with Philadelphia, is located in Center City, and this theater is inside of like a little mall, like a mall, a 3-story mall. Mm-hmm. So the fire alarm, I guess, was pulled in the mall, which then affected all of the stores and the theater in the building. So we all end up outside standing for a while. Cops come, they leave. Then we all try to go back into the building, only to find out that the exit that we left out of is not there was a door that opened to a store, and this guy kept saying, "If you're here for AMC, this is not your entrance. They only wanted their customers." So some of us went back through this semi-dark fire exit that was filled with cinder blocks and stuff. One woman mentioned that she was breathing in dust, and it looked like no one used the stairs since the property was built. And she joked at the irony of us walking through up and down, like coming out and then having to go back in there. She joked at the irony of us being there to watch a movie with anxiety, and this situation is giving her anxiety. And then a man said that he felt like we're in a game from the Saw movies. And he's going to be keeping his eyes open around every turn we make down the stairwell now. So we came back in. They restarted. We sat down. They restarted the movie. They apologized. We're watching. I'm trying to figure out when the alarm was pulled again. Okay.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, later. So I'm visualizing sadness in my mind. I don't remember the actual scene, but I know I'll have to look at my phone because I tried to take some pictures of this experience. So I have to look at my phone because sadness was on the screen I remember when we, during the second time the fire alarm was pulled, there are like these attention, this is an emergency, lights flicking, whatever. I will say though, that the 4:15 p.m. show was like they had a standard option, a 3D option, and then the Dolby Cinema. The 4:15 show was for the Dolby Cinema. I did enjoy the sound, from the bit of the movie that I saw. And there was like some rumbling in our seats, during like the earlier portion in the movie. So I think that if I would have been able to see the entire movie, it would have been a good experience. But, when we came back, so the fire alarm was pulled again. They paused the screen, then told us that we don't have to leave. They said this time we don't have to leave out of the theater. Just stay in your seats and we will continue playing the movie when the fire alarm lights stop blinking on the side of the walls. So we're just sitting there waiting while sadness is paused. Sadness is paused on the screen. I'll say by this point, I think, because this won't be a spoiler, she's on the radio. She's trying to she's trying to contact George.
Oh, yeah.
With the radio, okay?
Okay.
And so we saw that, but she's paused. So after a little while, they come back in, the employees, and tell us that we have to leave. So they kicked us out of the theater. We have to leave so that they can get the other people for the 7:00 p.m. show or another show to come in to watch Inside Out. So we have to leave, but they will give us some passes on our way out, some free passes that we can use for AMC or whatever. So we got kicked out. And then in the lobby, I met a man and a woman who came with his brother to see The Watchers. And apparently they had been sitting in an adjacent theater for 45 minutes waiting for the employees to play that theater after the first fire alarm. So,
oh, jeez.
I don't know.
Somebody was not on top of it.
Yeah.
Taking
and
care of
all the
business.
while they're still selling tickets. Like, I'm like, okay, excuse me, I'm trying to get like a refund. So I'm like, excuse me, ma'am, is this the refund line? No, I'm trying to check in with my ticket. So she's trying to figure out what theater she needs to go to watch a movie. There's a line for popcorn. It was just like a whole crowd. If you can imagine like a stadium exit after a baseball game, or like a sports stadium exit after the game, or a concert exit. The lobby kind of looked like that a bit, where you don't know where the line ends or begins for whatever it is you're trying to do. And so that is kind of the gist of what happened. So I only saw a portion.
So we have to be careful about spoilers for you.
I don't mind, like, because I'm not even against the movie. Like, I do like it, so I do look forward to watching it. I just feel bad for AMC because this is, well, not AMC, sorry, Disney and this is the opening. I feel bad for everyone that worked on this movie because it's the opening weekend. And from what you said earlier, Richard, it's like they were able to,
They did okay. I'm sorry that they lost a little bit of money there in Philadelphia, right. But I'll tell you what, they'll be okay. You, okay. On the other hand, you were abused.
Oh. Yeah, it was among other moviegoers, which I didn't know. I thought it was just for Inside Out. I didn't know that people that went to see The Watchers were all
it would be the whole theater complex if the fire alarm goes off. I've had that happen a couple of times.
I've had it happen twice. 2 times when the fire alarm went off. Once, well, no, actually 3 times. Once was when I was watching the first Avatar with my brother. And we ended up just going home. They gave us a pass, but we couldn't get back in. And then Second time was watching the movie Room, the one with Brie Larson.
Uh-huh.
And it was like literally right when she is jumping off the truck, like
and you don't know what's happening.
Like, and then the last time was I was watching the House of Gucci, and all of a sudden, so I missed like the whole final act of that movie. All of the I missed the House of Gucci. So yeah, it is wild when that happens.
Yeah, 2 years ago when we went to see X, 20 minutes before the end of the film, just as you're getting, it's a horror film and there's a climax, just as we're getting to the climax, the fire alarm goes off and we had to evacuate. And it was the last show of the evening. So they just basically closed down. They gave us a voucher to come back the next day, or whenever we wanted to. But I have the AMC pass, so we just, we can go back whenever we want. It's not that big a deal. But it was like I had seen an hour and 20 minutes of the movie and had missed the last 20 minutes. And so we went back and watched the whole movie again and saw the final 20 minutes. So it's one of those things where if you have time to do that, or, it's not interfering with anything else that you're doing, that's great. But criminy, for a lot of people, scheduling a visit to the movies is complicated, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for the AMC people because their whole schedule gets thrown off, and like you said, Nicole, they're trying to figure out, well, they're selling tickets for the next showing, and they're cutting you guys out because they're simply trying to catch up with what's going on. And I'm not sure that's the best way to handle it, but I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. So this has been an interesting sidetrack discussion, but those kinds of things happen, and that happened to you. I'm sorry that happened to you, because I think that there are things in this movie that you would probably have enjoyed had you been able to see the whole thing.
Yes, I do have some thoughts, as we move into your I'm sure you have a schedule, Richard, or topic.
Yeah,
So I have thoughts of, scare, sadness and writing and the casting, or not casting, but characters and whatnot. So from the bits that I did see.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I thought of the movie in general. First of all, I had rewatched Inside Out. I was not as big a fan of Inside Out as a lot of people have been. A lot of people were really high on that movie, that it was, they related to it very well. They thought it was very clever. And there were a couple of people that I, have encountered on the Lamb that it's their favorite Pixar film. And I didn't respond that way to it. I thought it was perfectly fine. I enjoyed it. I thought it was clever, but it would not be top tier Pixar for me. When I watched
my second favorite.
Yeah. Well, there you go. See? Oh. And when I watched it again during the week, I liked it a little bit better. I had a bigger appreciation for it. Maybe I wasn't bothered by the things that I thought were problematic before. Watching Inside Out 2, I was reminded of a lot of the things that were issues for me the first time out. However, it's a good-looking movie. There is a lot of stuff in it that is fun and interesting. I do think they're trying to tackle some reasonable concepts and ideas that are true for kids. I don't know that the little kids will appreciate it. And teenagers, it's tough for them to maybe relate to a movie that's really focused on them. They don't want to acknowledge that they are in that realm, that period of their life that's actually being covered by the film. I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue for some people. But obviously it's not a big issue because people are going to see the movie, which I'm very happy about. I want people to go to the movies and make theaters live. I was happy that our theater audience was full, and I'm now very thankful that there wasn't a fire alarm that went off during the movie. I like the introduction of the new characters. I think there's some that work pretty well. There are some funny bits that come along with the new characters. I do think that we miss out some things that on the other characters as a consequence, because basically you're doubling the number of characters that you have to kind of include in the story somehow, and so it means that things get a little cluttered at times. And so maybe they don't get as much attention as they should. That we focus primarily on two characters in the film, and anxiety. I don't. I saw your review, Rachel. I don't think of anxiety as a villain. I think of them as an antagonist, but not necessarily one that has bad intentions. I think anxiety's intentions are all good for the most part, but it's just the way that character has to handle things because of what they are that makes it complicated and difficult. And it's certainly true that when you get to your teenage years, anxiety kicks in. There are a lot of people that just, they lose their fearlessness. Little kids are fearless all the time, and then they get to a point in their life where suddenly everything is a danger. Meeting somebody new is scary. Trying something that you haven't done before is fear-inducing. And
I don't think that a villain necessarily doesn't have good intentions. I think that I just didn't love the fact that they immediately put all of the other emotions in a jar,
yeah.
and sends them away and to like emotion prison, and that I just, we worked so hard in our society of destigmatizing mental illness and these things, and I do think in the end the movie has enough to say and encourages conversation, so it is an overall good, but I would have made a different choice than making anxiety the villain or the antagonist, however you want to phrase it.
I think that the decision that we send the original emotions away, because that's basically what happens. I don't think we're giving away anything here. Basically, the new emotions kind of move in, and the previous emotions are banished in a way. I think that is one of the problems with the story, because in essence, we're repeating the same kinds of things that we did in the first film. We have basically the same.
True.
We have basically the same kind of journey, trying to get back to the headquarters and make things work. Only now we have more characters that are doing it. They don't have the same kinds of issues that they're dealing with, but they have lots of complications along the way. Something new gets invented every time I turn around. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
I think in the end they were able to cobble it all together and make it work. There's enough heart, there's enough humor, there's enough, all that. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, it's. Go ahead, Nicole. It sounded like you had something that you wanted to add.
Well, the emotion prison that Rachel mentioned, I think I agree with what you said, Richard, about anxiety not necessarily being a villain per se, but more of an antagonist. I actually changed that word in my notes before we started recording. I was going to describe anxiety as a villain, and I deleted that word and wrote antagonist instead. I from what I saw, it seemed like anxiety's character was a solid antagonist and something that we could kind of latch onto more so than the first one, because the first one didn't necessarily, like, it had a story arc in the sense that there was some conflict and there was a challenge that they had, but there wasn't really like a good guy, bad guy, or something concrete. And I think that the introduction of anxiety's character in the sequel here creates a nice little challenge, if you will. And the scene where they were heading off to that emotion prison, I think it was joy or one of the original emotions. They said, that they are suppressed emotions now. And given that Riley's entering her teenage years, in even adulthood, I think a lot of us, a lot of people in general do suppress emotions. And so when someone's feeling sad, or if they're depressed, or if they have anxiety, it is, I don't know if it's natural per se, but it's common for a lot of people to suppress emotions. And we do this and it's not, so I say this to say that I saw the hauling off of the original emotions to prison as like a normal occurrence for someone at Riley's age, as it relates to what they want to present for the film. Like they're giving her acne, they're having her have these issues with her friends. So I didn't necessarily see anything wrong with that particular scene. It seemed normal to me. Only because I can relate to the suppressed emotion thing. As do anyone who is out in the street. Like, we might want to punch the next driver in the face if they cut us off on the road, right, or something like that. But we suppress a lot of things.
Well, sometimes we suppress it, sometimes we let it out in a different way. We don't actually punch them, but boy, I got to tell you, I let people know how I feel, even though they have no idea, because I'm saying it out loud in the car. I'm calling people. I don't shout it out the window at them, but I'm going, "Oh, you stupid idiot! What the hell are you doing?" You know, that kind of thing. So
I have to adopt that, Richard. I got yelling at people in the street, and I'm not even in a car. I'm crossing the street, but I don't like when drivers don't use their turning signals. Sometimes I consider that people forget. But sometimes people have almost hit me, and I have a habit of yelling and cursing.
Yeah, but I like the point that you're making. You're right. We do suppress some of our emotions, or we channel them into something either productive or unproductive. And I saw a little bit of that in the film. For example, the anxiety that gets, when anxiety kind of takes over, and Riley is filled with anxiety, she channels that anxiety into going early to practice, working harder at trying to achieve her goal, becoming so focused on the hockey skills that she's not paying attention to her friends or the consequences of how she's acting. So channeling it, I think, into a direction that is not necessarily bad, but it sometimes ignores the other things that are going on in your life. That's the thing that's a problem. And here's the thing. Look, when you're talking about emotions and people's complex internal working and their self-concept, you're talking about something that is very complicated, and you've got to simplify it for a story like this. There are not just 5 or 10 emotions. There are hundreds of emotions. Can you imagine trying to crowd that all into a movie? Of course not. It doesn't work.
Well, that's why I felt like they were a little bit redundant in the emotions that they chose. I mean, to me, there's not that much difference between anxiety, fear, and embarrassment. Those are all really close. And so I think they could have done better with either just using the emotions they already have and just introducing anxiety and maybe ennui and envy maybe. But I don't know. I think that even though it overall worked for me, I do think that there was some weakness in the writing going on there.
And they're making choices, I think, because of characters and trying to keep the story going. Like you mentioned, embarrassment being very similar to some of the other emotions that are going on, fear or and I can see that. But on the other hand, you're trying to create a character that's going to be something that the audience can relate to, and you're typically dealing with a younger audience, and so I think that that's why they make that choice. Whether or not it's the best choice for storytelling is another issue, but it certainly gives us something visual. I mean, the giant, outsized, uncomfortable emotion that stands out and draws attention to itself when it doesn't want to. pulling its hoodie down tight over its face. That's a nice visualization that kids, I think, can relate to. And I see it all the time, people doing those kinds of things. So, it's probably a little bit of a shorthand way to connect with the audience as opposed to telling the story and having some fidelity to how emotions actually work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got. Sounds like people generally liked the film, but everybody had some problems with it, and Nicole's problems were fairly unique because she missed quite a bit of it. I was going to ask you about the characters, since this is a character-based film. They do try to create the characters. Did you guys have favorite returning characters from the first film that you thought got a better shot, or you liked better, or you're glad that they were back in this film?
Yes. Disgust is my favorite character. Sadness, who was not my favorite character in the first half of the first film, I enjoyed. Sadness still is not my favorite character at all. But I did like to see. I liked how Sadness kind of stepped up to the plate, and played an even more pivotal role in helping Riley get back to like her true self, or at least a non-destructive self in this sequel. But my favorite character from the original set of Emotions is Disgust. I love her personality. I love her fashion sense, and I love her ability to think strategically, in the sense of like the scene where she made anger. She deliberately made anger really mad, so like fire could shoot out of his head and like smash a hole through this like glass wall or something in the movie to like get them out of a place or into a place. So I like that. I love her.
Well, I thought as a character, she certainly had more to do with what was going on in the story this time than she did in the first movie.
I liked all of the returning characters. I thought there was pretty seamless voice acting changes. I don't think I would have even known for Disgust and Fear. I thought they did a great job with that. I do love Sadness, actually. I think it's really good. I like the fact that she was allowed to be kind of the leader in a way. I thought that Anger was really funny. Most of the good jokes were given to him in this. And like I said, I really like Joy coming to that conclusion that maybe Riley's not going to be feeling as much joy the older she gets. I thought that was a really truthful moment. So I like Joy's journey as well.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Joy's journey, and I do want to give people the spoiler wall warning right now, because I think that this is, the kind of the key element of the story. So if you are interested in being surprised, maybe tune out now, go see the movie, come back and listen to the rest of the podcast at this point. But I had the same problem with Joy from the first movie that in this movie. Joy is obtuse and can't see right in front of her the things that are obvious. And she makes the exact same mistake in this film that she made in the first film. In the first film, she's trying to diminish and dismiss the emotion of sadness and suggest, and try and control it that way. And what is she doing in this film? She's doing the same thing with bad memories. And it's like, wait a second, this character has not grown at all, even though it seemed like at the end of the first film the character had grown. She's behaving in exactly the same way. And eventually makes the discovery, like we've talked about, Rachel's mentioned it a couple of times, that maybe there's just not going to be as much joy in your life, or you're not going to express it as much as you get older. And become an adult. That's kind of sad to think about. That'll make sadness a more prominent character as a consequence.
I mean, she is a somewhat one-note character, but isn't that by kind of necessity? I mean,
it is. Which I think is the problem with the movie from my perspective, and that is that the characters can't really have much of a story arc because they have to be true to what their nature is. And if you suddenly vary from that nature, then you undermine the whole concept of the emotions working the way they do. We can't have sadness laughing at all the jokes. We can't have anger being patient with something. Disgust can't simply try something new and different and go, oh well, that's okay. They have to be what they are, which means that they're not going to change much during the film, which means that all that we're going to get is the mechanics, the clockwork of the story, as opposed to the emotion that I think we get in other Pixar films.
Yeah, I guess I see it almost more as sort of a modern day fable, with like a simple, clear kind of message that it's trying to share, and so I guess in just the same way that you wouldn't from, say, Little Red Riding Hood, where there's just an obvious like big bad wolf, and you're not for those kind of like fables and fairy tales, you're not expecting like nuanced characters. This is a tool to help parents talk to their kids about what they're going through, and hopefully make them laugh, maybe get a little teary-eyed along the way. Do I think it could have been more nuanced when it comes to anxiety? Yes. And I also think that it was a mistake to make Riley 13, because she would have been, almost all girls would have experienced some signs of puberty by the time you're 13. So there's problems. But I think the overall sort of arc of that kind of human experience of going through friends, feeling like you're not being accepted, worrying about what people are thinking about you, all of that, I think there's something there here. And overall, it had enough heart and enough laughs, enough soul to kind of get me through it. Where, I mean, speaking of soul, like that was one that got so messy when he turns into a cat that for me, it lost me. It lost me. And it didn't work as well as it should have. But this was sort of consistent enough at what it was trying to do that I think I do think it's pretty successmovore than I was expecting. Maybe low expectations help.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to make a comparison to some classic Disney films and also some Pixar films as a way of kind of illustrating what my issue here is. And when, like you said, there's a fable that's going on. Look, Little Red Riding Hood is a simple story. That's fine. It has its point, the moral of the story that you get through, and we're not going beyond that. But you don't make a 2-hour movie or an hour and a half movie out of that. That's a segment of a movie.
Yeah.
And I happened to see Alice in Wonderland yesterday on the big screen. And Alice in Wonderland is a beautiful film. It's full of interesting characters. There's a lot of funny stuff, but none of it means anything because it's idiosyncratic every time we get to a new scene. And so it's inventive and entertaining, but there's not really any character development. It's not supposed to be character development. When we have other Pixar films, we see characters going through some of the things that we're talking about. The Incredibles, I forget the daughter, she's
Violet.
Violet, thank you. She's going through a lot of these changes too, and Flash, or Dash, I'm sorry, they're kids, but they're having to make adjustments, and you can see how some of the things that happen to them kind of change their personalities, and it integrates them into the family, and the family is developing together. I don't get that same kind of development in this story, because the characters have to stay true to what their nature is.
Yeah.
And so it feels less involving. It doesn't mean it's less
I can see that.
entertaining. It doesn't mean it's less entertaining, but for me, surprisingly, the subject of emotions is the thing that's missing from the film for me. This is not a film that has provoked a tear from me, that's gotten an emotional reaction from me other than amusement. Whereas let's face it, the first 10 minutes of Up is devastatingly.
Oh yeah.
And
the last 10 minutes when
yes.
People always say that, but the last 10 minutes when he sees that note from Ellie, and he knows that she really did love him all along.
Yeah.
That's as good as that first 10 minutes, in my opinion.
Yeah. And there are so many of those stories that work that way, where you get this feeling that these characters, you can relate to them, you can understand them. And I just never feel that way with the two Inside Out movies. It doesn't make them bad. It just makes them different, and maybe something that is a little bit harder for me to relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. Interesting.
All right.
It's
well,
not a perfect film.
No.
But I just felt like I've been so frustrated with a lot of what Disney has been putting out lately. And so the fact that it worked as well as it did was actually a kind of a pleasant surprise for me.
Yes, I agree. Compared to some of the things that have been going on, this is much better.
Compared to Wish, there's no comparison.
I've missed the last couple of ones. I just couldn't even bring myself to see Wish or Elemental.
Yeah, Elemental was so lame, in my opinion.
Oh.
I thought it was very derivative and not for me.
Nicole, you seem to feel differently. You want to? We don't mean to leave you on the sidelines, although I know that there's sometimes a reason that you're a little bit like this.
No, I am curious, Richard, if they had more in terms of Joy's growth and also just the nuances of emotions, if they showed a bit more of what we saw with Joy in the sequel here, where she had that breakdown.
Well, yeah.
It seemed like it seemed like there was a glimpse of like a different side of Joy and anger. One being in that scene where she had broke down and started crying and was talking about, I'm paraphrasing here, but expressing how she felt like the pressure.
Do you know how hard it is to stay joyful all the time?
Exactly, around all of you guys and whatnot. For me, it seemed in that moment, it seemed like there was like, that was like an attempt to show like her ability to tap into other emotions and possibly, a starting point for her growth journey. And then with anger, even though his was funny, his other emotional side was funny. When they were in that little warehouse place or whatever, where anxiety was getting all of these minions to like come up with all they were doing anxiety's projections of all of these different scenarios. And Joy took one spot over, and anger offered her a scenario with like, oh, what if they give her flowers or something? Like he drew this like happy picture, and he even mentioned that, hey, he can have a happy side. Like I thought that was maybe a little glimpse into their ability to kind of...
Yeah, well, those are nice moments, but of course they're inconsistent with the world that they've created.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's, they make it work, when they want it to work, and so it feels, I think, more contrived as a consequence, because they can't stay true to everything that they've set up in the world and have an interesting story, because you have to have situations where the characters do moderate their emotions to some degree. Maybe if we found, I can't rewrite it. I don't know. But if emotions paired up with one another, for instance, to moderate their influence, like so sadness and joy, they don't necessarily wrestle over a moment, but they talk about it a little bit, or they maybe fight over the button a little bit in order to get the outcome that Riley needs in that particular moment, or we need another character like Patience, to work with anger. I don't know, something like that. It just feels, like I said, that they make it work when they want it to work, and that just feels like it's a shortcut that isn't true to the world that they've built.
I can see that. Yeah, that's fair.
But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it, and I like the concepts. Look, we're making a movie for a general audience, and in particular for kids, and simplifying the way that these things work is important. Otherwise the story is just not is going to be too complicated. We don't want hours and hours of Freudian analysis.
I just hope that nobody walks out of it saying anxiety is bad and we need to be afraid of it. That anxiety is a natural thing that happens, and we work through it and we deal with it, and it's not something to be kind of I don't know. It's just something that just happens in life, and we deal with it.
Yes. Like I said, one of the things that might have helped is having more Riley and less of the emotions.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
They did have more than in the first one.
Yes, they did.
Combining the characters, I do think that there is something to what Rachel said earlier about the redundancy. When I think of anxiety and fear, they're essentially the same character. Like, you don't need them both. You could just have one. Because anxiety is basically acting out of fear, and fear has anxiety. So we don't need both of them.
Well, yeah. We also it's interesting because there is a difference between emotions that are close to one another. Envy and jealousy are not the same thing, but if you had two characters like that, they would certainly seem the same on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you said. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get away from the characters for a minute. Is there anything in the film concepts that you thought really worked well that you enjoyed, or anything that you didn't think worked well?
Well, I really thought the whole thing with her friends really worked well, because I remember that age, particularly middle school years, just like cycling through friends. Like it felt like every 6 months I had a new friend group, and I remember being kind of tossed off by people, and I remember how that felt, and then maybe thinking about changing friends myself, and it's just a hard time. And the fact that the Family Island was this tiny little thing, and Friendship Island was this huge thing, I think that was really true to that experience, and her knowing, okay, these are going to be the people I'm going to be spending time with. I have to ingratiate myself with them. They have to like me. These other friends who I love, they're not going to be at the school. They're not going to be a part of my life. I can't rely on them for my day-to-day friend, sustenance. And so I think that was really smart and something that everybody can relate to, especially at that age. And then also, I thought the whole concept of her sense of self changing was really smart. That they came up with this, that I'm a good person, I am an honest person, that this was her sense of self, And once her friends group is altered, she's really having to figure out a whole new sense of self. She's having to figure out, what is it that I like? Is the stuff I like not cool anymore? Do I not want to admit that I like that stuff? Do I want to change my hair? Do I want to change, like, her whole sense of self is changing. She's going to high school. She's going to, like, that makes sense to me. And so I thought those were a couple brilliant sort of set pieces to build the story around, and that felt real true to me.
All right. Well, I think the idea, your self-concept comes from a lot of different places. Sometimes it's social comparison, sometimes it's an accomplishment, sometimes it's reinforcement by somebody else. I thought, for instance, that it's interesting, that her parents are very supportive of her, and they've got all kinds of, comments that are reinforcing the positive sense of self, and all it takes was, kind of a note of criticism from the coach to undermine her sense of her accomplishments and abilities, regardless of what she's doing on the ice. By the way, I am not a big hockey fan. I've never been to a hockey game. All of my favorite sports movies, though, are hockey movies for some reason, and I love the way it looks on screen. So this was a film that it worked for me, despite the fact that I'm not a hockey guy.
Yeah, well, I think it could have been anything. It's just that they have to find something for her to be kind of start obsessing.
Yeah,
with,
the thing that she's good at, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's the best at, and that gives her room for growth as a person. And I like that idea. Like you said, the thing with the friends, I think, is an important element of that age group, because especially when you're changing schools and now you're going to have a completely different set of people that you're interacting with, that's traumatic. I remember going through that, went to a different school when I went into the 7th grade, and I'm now interacting with people who've been together for 7 classes before me getting here, and how do you fit in with everybody, and how do you connect with them? And it's like, well, do I want to like the same things they like, do the things that they do because that's what seems to be popular? Maybe that makes the story a little bit more complicated, though. But the emotion thing is a big part of that too.
With the hockey stuff that was in the movie, I actually liked the portrayal of the sport more in the first one, even though it wasn't as pronounced than I liked it in the second one. Although I haven't been to hockey games in person, I used to watch hockey growing up, mostly for the fights, but I watched it. I watched it because one of my older cousins would watch it, and he seemed to like it, and I thought he was cool. So I'm like, oh, well, he watches hockey, so I'll watch hockey. But as an adult, I don't watch a lot of the games anymore, but I do still read about them, and I read about the different experiences of the players. And because of that, I didn't particularly like how they made the hockey characters very diverse, especially the coach. I think that it's unrealistic based on what the parts of the sport that I've seen over time, and things that I've read about hockey in the U.S. and in Canada. And so in real life, it seems like hockey is not a diverse sport. And now I will say I don't know anything about women's hockey, or even if women's hockey is a thing in high school or pro sports. So maybe it's more diverse in women's, in the women's, what do you call that? I have a brain freeze.
Category, division.
In the women's division,
There you go.
But much like the different forms of animation displayed in this sequel, which I'll mention in a minute, I think this DEI attempt of Riley's hockey camp and even her school team where she plays with her best friends were a bit out of place and out of touch with reality as it relates to the sport. Only in the sequel, though. In the first one, I thought it was.
Well, a high school in San Francisco has an ice hockey team. That, I think, is maybe pushing it to begin with. I'm not exactly sure that would ever happen. You'd have to have you'd have to certainly be going to a private school in a situation like that, because there is no public school in California that has an ice hockey team. I can't imagine that there is. But by the way,
that too. I didn't even think about that.
By the way, Damien has joined us, and he's with us now. So I'd like to give Damien a quick chance to kind of plug in with his general thoughts about the movie before we finish up our discussion here. Damien, welcome back to the show. We're glad to have you with us. What we've been talking for a while and got a lot of opinions out and talked about a lot of things, and you're a little late to the discussion, so we can't integrate you into everything, but what we can do is hear your general thoughts on the film right now. So if you can take 3 or 4 minutes to kind of tell us what you thought of the film, what you liked about it, anything that was a problem for you, and then we'll continue the discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I hope it doesn't take away from the whole show. I'll put in at what I can, and I guess we'll start here. I went to see Inside Out 2, and it was delightful, as I knew it would be. Such a wonderful movie. I started to say it was a kids' movie, but I think it transcends kids, and don't you? And I think it's based on human emotions, and I think it's so wonderful that Disney, as a huge mogul of this world, this earth, this mortal enterprise, is taking the resources to talk about our emotions. So that was my initial pull into it, why I wanted to see it again. So yeah, let's just hit the movie. Let's talk good, bad, and then whatever else I can think of. So for the good, I loved anxiety. I'm sure you've talked about anxiety. I was a little late today, but I'm sure to the meeting. Had little things mixed up here at home, but I'm here now, and I just loved anxiety. So I'll find out what you guys said later up to this point. So cool that they included anxiety, because gosh, since the late 80s, Prozac and depression has just become an epidemic, especially among young people, whereas I don't think young people really thought about it much, in the 70s or the 80s. So it is an epidemic with young people. I have 2 kids. I actually have 3 kids, but 2 that are kind of in the teen zone. One's 16 and one's 19, and they're both my daughters, and they share with me a lot of things that cause them anxiety that really didn't, cause me much trouble. We had a Funkin' Wagnalls encyclopedia to look stuff up, like about the moon and space. They have just, the internet. Need I say more? So right there's a lot of anxiety. So that was wonderful that they chose that character. I really loved that character. I wonder, and maybe we can talk about this later in more of a discussion, but I really do think we need some form of anxiety. Maybe it's not anxiety, maybe it's tension, or, if you think of somebody with no anxiety, you kind of think of a blob, If you think of a winner or somebody in the Olympics are going on right now? Somebody just told me that yesterday. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, like somebody in the Olympics who's running a sprint, they have a lot of anxiety, and they just know how to channel it, So my one thing that I thought was kind of bad was about the presentation was, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think anxiety can have a place. They summed that up and they said every emotion has a place. They summed that up at the end, so they kind of solved that. But I would have liked to see the places where anxiety would be helpful, like in a sprinting race at the beginning. Look at a sprinter before he runs his race. They channel, or she, they are channeling maybe not anxiety, and you guys can help me with that definition, but I would have liked to have seen anxiety come through a little more, so maybe people wouldn't be so afraid of it and look at it as so creepy and out there. I'll finish with this. It reminds me of Carolyn Messner, my professor of public speaking way back when I was like 18 years old. She said, Damien, it's not the fact that you don't have anxiety, it's the fact that you get your butterflies flying in formation. So I kept thinking about that, and I thought that would be neat if Carolyn Messner could have been a little cartoon in there saying that. But yeah, so that's the only issue I really had with it. It wasn't too long like Furiosa. It was just delightful, and I got to spend the day with my kids, which I told you guys earlier in a text. But so that was wonderful. And so that's Inside Out, and I'm really glad to be part of the discussion now. That's all.
Well, we're glad to have you back included in the discussion, and I think some of the things that you said about anxiety are similar to some of the things that we talked about.
Good.
I think people liked the movie, although everybody had some reservations about it for a variety of different reasons. And you've picked out some of the things that we identified as being important in the film. We were just kind of getting to the summary about our exit about the movie. Like you mentioned, maybe problems with the film. Just generally, do you have recommendations and that kind of thing? How would you summarize the film? We're going to kind of close out our discussion of the issue. So,
Sure.
Nicole was in the odd situation of having seen only part of the film because there were fire alarms going off during her screenings, and so she ended up only seeing some of the movie. But Nicole, can you maybe summarize your view for us with what you have seen as a way of closing out your discussion of Inside Out 2?
With what I have seen, I would definitely recommend this movie to anyone who already saw the first one and wants to see how Riley grows up and develops. I would recommend it to anyone with young children or anyone, with teenagers. I do think that some of the dialogue isn't necessarily kid friendly in the sense that it seems to be more geared towards adults, so adults would be able to understand it more than young children. But from what I saw, I did like it, and I do want to know what happens. So it wasn't one of those movies where if this was another movie and we were evacuated, I wouldn't go back to see it. If I went back to the theater to watch this, it probably won't be at an AMC location. I will say that. But if I don't catch it in the theater, I will most likely stream it. I like it. I like the movie. It makes me happy and it makes me laugh. And so I don't, Rachel mentioned like maybe she had low expectations earlier in the podcast. Maybe I don't have high expectations for this, especially since like animation isn't like my favorite genre. So I don't really care, like, so long as the story can work in some form and everything's good and I laugh, or it's cute, it looked good, it's like you said, Richard, it sounds good. I would say go see it. For someone on the fence, go see it, but don't go to any AMC theater to see it. No AMC theater. Go see it somewhere else. Yeah, I like how they fused some stop motion animation into the sequel and added some other artistic stylings to some of the scenes, like that cartoon character and his sidekick Pouchy.
Yeah, I think Rachel was going to put in her 2 cents on that too in just a second.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I did like their attempts to do that. I still, at the same time, I also found it to be a bit jarring and out of place for me when it happened in some of the scenes. It threw me off a little bit, but I did appreciate their attempts to add, different types of animation and different types of art and illustrations to add more depth to the film from a visual standpoint. But yeah.
Okay.
See it, just not at AMC.
Rachel, you did say something about the animation styles at one point, and I got the impression you were going to talk about it. Am I correct in that?
Well, I mean, the animation Pixar's always outstanding, and I think it was here. I do think it was really fun that they had the Poochie.
Right.
In the 2D animation, for they had little moments like that were unexpected. It looked like a character from a Saturday morning cartoon, worked in to the story. I thought that was a delightful surprise, and some of the humor that really worked. And I always loved the way that they designed the memories. Those and the sound design really works with those as well. The little clink clink kind of the way that they sound, the way they roll, the way that they look. I also thought the score. It's a new composer, but it sounded great. Real Michael Giacchino like score. That was pretty seamless. So yeah, I think that all of it technically worked quite well.
Yeah, I like the integration of those other animation styles as a way to kind of contrast with what was going on in the story. We're looking at memories especially, and our memories are going to be of the way we saw things, and I like that.
Yeah, I also thought that the sarcasm, that was very funny.
Yes,
that was a good bit.
I think that's my favorite element of the film. Although the joke that I laughed the hardest at was, when thinking about future careers, anthropological musicologist. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
that was a funny one.
The parade of future careers. That was very funny.
Yes,
it was very funny. It was a lot funnier than I expected.
Damien, was there something in particular that you liked? Something about the characters or about the story, something that you would draw attention to and say, watch for that when you're seeing this movie?
Okay, well, here's the thing then. Perfect. Really comfortable with this movie. Really enjoyed this movie. And I have to say, I told you guys, but I don't know if people really listen to me, but, I'm mostly horror. I'm going through 60s horror right now. It's just blowing my mind. I just watched The Wicker Man again, and it just blew my mind. I downloaded the official soundtrack. I mean, that's kind of where I live. Everybody's freaked out by me. But yeah, RileyOnFilm.com. That's where you'll find that stuff. But anyways, so I took a break because I wanted to see Inside Out with my kids, and of course the show came up. And I thought it was interesting, something maybe to look at that was sort of horror-ish and piercing and edgy, was the idea that anxiety and, help me out, who's the other one? They're a team of two, and they're kind of like against the old group, and I thought that was very, like, therapists could...
Envy?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Envy, is that the character you were thinking of?
Must be. Yeah, I remember the ones sneaking around, they're trying to stop. Oh, they put him in the jar or the ball. I'm sorry, I haven't written all these thoughts down, but basically the point is that I'm trying to make is that as a Buddhist, I believe that everything has a purpose, but not everything is profitable. So what I'm trying to do more in my life and what resonated with me and what people could maybe look for is how do you recognize an emotion as positive. And some of them, breakup, a death, some things in life are just not positive. But I thought it was interesting to kind of sort of focus on them when they were sneaking around trying to take over and do and anxiety just went crazy. Kind of like I said before about Carolyn Messler, my old teacher, get those butterflies flying in formation. So like in your own life, maybe to just kind of examine. I mean, this whole movie is really about your own life, right? I mean, everything you see, you're going, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that. It's not only Riley's life that's doing flashbacks, but you're actually, if you're participating and you're into it, which I was, which is rare outside of a horror movie genre these days. But I did get really into it, and I saw sort of like that darkness, and where is the purpose in that darkness? And maybe that explains a little more what I said earlier, what I alluded to about anxiety character, maybe coming out as the hero here and there. Maybe envy coming out as the hero here and there. I would like to see more in that, but for people going to see it, all I'm going to tell you right now is personally, I think it's better than the first one, but my kids liked the first one better. So I don't, I'm not going to tell everybody it's not as good as the first one. I mean, it's better than the first one, like universally. But for me, I liked it because A, she's older. I play in a rock band. Like every song we sing is about love. So yeah, she gets into the love age, but not as much as I would have liked to have seen. But she does get into that. So I guess what I'm trying to say, beating around the bush here, is just you're going to find a purpose in your life for each one of these emotions that they present. And, it reminds me of when, I don't know if they do it anymore, but in the old days at McDonald's, or maybe it was Burger King, you could go in there and get a meal, kid's meal, and then they would give you like a little miniature of from a movie. And I think it would be so cool. They probably have these. I want to go check today, probably, and check, because it's such a neat thing. To have like miniatures of all these guys.
What's the toy giveaway at McDonald's? Yeah, I gotcha.
You remember that?
Oh, sure.
Remember the Star Wars glass cups?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Those were incredible. Anyways, so yeah, they need these at McDonald's, or be able to buy them, and then just put them on your little grooming shelf or bathroom or wherever. And in the morning, just think, hey, is that one profitable? Is that one profitable? So mostly looking at how they're profitable, but I differed with the director and the writer in that Joy by Amy Poehler is not necessarily the hero of all situations. Does that make sense? So I would be looking, hey, is that really bad for me, or could that be good for me? I would be thinking that way. And if you write a paper on it, I'll give you 100 points extra credit. Oh shoot, this isn't my class. Sorry, I don't do Skype. I do classes online from time to time, especially during the pandemic. But I would definitely, I'm not teaching over the summer, but if I was teaching my college course, I would definitely, and I may, in the fall, offer this as an extra credit, because boy, there's a little bit for all of us in this. Don't you think, Richard?
Oh, yeah. You mentioned your public speaking teacher as a former public speaking instructor. I know exactly what you're talking about, getting your butterflies in a row.
Oh, I didn't know that you were a public speaking instructor.
Oh, yeah. No,
wow, I always wondered what you taught. I knew you taught something. That's great.
Public speaking and argumentation. That's what I did.
No way, we're both rhetoricians.
Yes, that's it.
We have to chat offline sometime.
I always remember the time that I really impressed somebody. They said, what's your degree in? And I said, rhetoric. And they said, no way. And I said, way. That was the only response I could come up with.
That is classic. And the more you know, the shorter your answer.
There you go.
Oh, that's what I've learned.
But, this would be, if I was doing an interpersonal communications class, this would be an easy one to assign, where you talk about your emotions and how you manage your emotions. Can you manage your emotions, or do your emotions manage you? And I think there's a lot of stuff that is being said in this film that is useful to people.
Yep.
It's just, you've missed most of the discussion that we had about story and characters and some of the things that we saw as flaws. I just see that, as a story, it's a little bit problematic because it repeats the same process that the first film did, and that the characters are kind of static for the most part, because they need to be, which creates a little bit of a problem. But I would still recommend the film, and I think it's. I'm glad that it's doing well out there, and it sounds like all of us kind of are endorsing the film to some degree or other. But Nicole doesn't want you to see it at an AMC theater because somebody might pull the fire alarm.
What did you think about that part? Any of you guys jump in real quick? since I'm late. Sorry. But when they would shoot those what they thought were negative memories, and they would just shoot them over there, and there were all those balls that had gathered.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the things that we talked about before. In the first film, it was the shunting aside sadness and emotions that might be perceived as being negative. Emotions, by the way, I don't think are positive or negative. They have positive or negative consequences, but your emotions are how you feel. You're not a bad person because you have because you're sad because you have envy. It's just how you feel at that moment. Now, how do you act on it? How do you channel it? How do you use it? How do you react to it? That's what makes them good or bad, per se, not the emotion itself. Because all of us have all of those emotions.
Yeah, like, for example, I can be envious of Jim Carrey's wealth, or I can listen to him say in countless interviews when he was broke and couldn't pay his rent, he wrote himself a check for $1 million. You ever heard of that? Jim Carrey wrote himself a check because he was so envious of all these people that were making it, and he wasn't making it, and he still has that check. So
I think he can cash it at this point.
Yeah, what a great thing though. But I mean, that's where his envy, he channeled it. You know what? The word is not channeled; it's transformed. He transformed his what could have been a negative emotion. He transformed it into something positive that actually motivated him on his refrigerator, a check to himself. So envy there got him going in the right direction, and instead of envy, he developed something called a sense of awe, A-W-E. So he transformed envy into awe, and then it manifested for him. So there you go.
Well, I'll give you my sense of awe, A-H-H-H. Awe. What a nice thought.
If I had $1 million check for myself, it definitely would be A-H-H-H-H-H.
All right, folks. Well, we're going to take a quick break here to hear from a Lamb Podcasting Network show, and then we'll be right back with our exit question response in just a minute.
Hello there, film lovers. My name's Damien Riley of Riley on Film. Tune in and I'll give you some horror and comedy, at least I aim to. I'm also a musician. Come visit me at RileyOnFilm.com. Thank you mucho. My new album is Zen y la Fermata on YouTube and YouTube Music exclusively.
Sorry, full toast. Pretty baby.
Come join me at RileyOnFilm.com.
We're back, and our exit question of the week. I'll tell you what, if I'd seen the movie before I sent out the exit question of the week, I might very well have asked you to recall one of those suppressed memories and tell us how it influenced your life, either in a positive or negative way. But I didn't think of that ahead of time. Instead, I thought of something else that's related to making movies. And instead of a question so much, I offered our guest this week a prompt. Can you pitch us an idea for a Pixar or Disney-style animation film? Give us a concept, a basic plot, and maybe a couple of characters that you think would draw interest from an audience. So, Rachel, we're going to start with you. What's your pitch?
My pitch is there is a popular, beloved novel that I cannot believe has never been made into a feature film. It's called The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by a writer named Avi, A-V-I. And this was published in 1990. It's not new. And it has all of the pieces for a great Disney animated film. I think maybe it feels more Disney than Pixar, but they could still do it. Because a lot of people were really excited for Brave and were kind of let down by that story. Because it's about this young woman who is traveling to America. She's basically by herself, and she's getting this. She's going to meet her family in America. She ends up on a pirate ship, and she basically ends up going from being this mousy woman to being this pirate. And it's such a fun story. It's such a good story. It's got adventure. It's got fun characters. and it's got your strong female characters, which everybody wants these days. And I think it would have all of the places where you could have, if you wanted to get like Alan Menken on board with somebody, maybe with Tim Rice writing some new songs. You could make it a really fun musical adventure with pirates and Charlotte Doyle. And I don't know, I just think it would be a huge hit. I think everybody would love it. And I think it could get them back on their feet.
All right, let me see if I can find $60 million to produce this film.
Absolutely.
Just write a check to yourself and you got it.
There you go. I just better not cash it.
I love it that you have an arcane memory of something you read, that's not really well known, but it really resonated with you.
But this is a well-known book. It won the Newbery Award. I mean, it's just it boggles my mind that this has not been made into a movie. Like, this is a popular novel. I just don't understand.
I'm sure that somebody bought the rights and has tried to pitch it, and either it's in development hell at some studio, or the people who own the rights have basically moved on to something else, and they haven't sold them yet. Because it sounds to me like you've got a good idea for a story here that that would make a movie. Nicole, did you have something that you want to pitch us?
Yes, and it's only for this exit question, but it is loosely based on a few true stories. For the sake of time, the topic, and the fact that I feel like my brain hasn't been working this week, let's just call it, Dude, Where's My Cat? And basically, a shy house cat named Logan gets left outside one night when her neglectful pet sitter locks the doors. And after looking for food and witnessing a tragic car accident that kills a stray cat from the neighborhood, Logan tries to find a safe place to hide away from loud noises and moving vehicles. Along the way, she meets X, a one-eyed cat with a severed tail who ran away from an animal shelter to escape being put down, and an aggressive, well-intact street cat named Skittles, who fights all the time to maintain his territory of quality pet food spots. Facing a busy city, a growing feral animal population, and very cruel humans, Logan has to figure out a way to survive the night with the help of her new friends, Skittles and X, until her owner returns home from work. That's my pitch.
I like it.
I love it.
I like animal stories, and I like the fact that you gave the animals in your story names. Logan, X, and Skittles sound like great names. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I agree. And X, yeah.
Cool beans.
And you know what? I'm going to have fun because I'm going to use AI to come up with images for these stories when I put them into the YouTube video. So you guys should be looking for that. Damien, what have you got? What do you want to sell us on?
Unreal that you're going to do that, because this is like total AI keyword heaven. I want to do The Octopus's Garden. That's the title. And it's the Beatles at Shea Stadium. Early television appearances. Every pop culture iconic Beatles memory that, the focus groups will put together that are big in our collective consciousness, because that's what Disney does. And then the psychedelic-like vantage point of the protagonist will guide us through the movie from Ringo's drum set. After he eats magic mushrooms with Paul, hopefully if Paul's still around, at age 90. What do you think? Octopus's Garden. Octopus's Garden.
I love the title. I'm not sure how the story develops, but I also like the fact that you're trying to get the still living Beatles characters into the story. How it's going to be animated is going to be an interesting one, and that it's at, did you say Shea Stadium? concert?
Well, that's the huge iconic most people know that are my age. I don't know, but yeah, early television appearances. Like on Ed Sullivan Show,
Sure.
things like that. But from the drum set. See,
Yeah, I like
the
that.
whole thing. The whole thing is called Octopus's Garden because that's the song, the hit, probably the biggest hit, other than Get By With a Little Help from My Friends. That's probably his biggest hit. But then, the Octopus's Garden, everybody knows Ringo for that. And he's doing a lot of interviews these days. He had one in, oh God, what's the old person magazine that I just started subscribing to? I can't remember, but there's a magazine, I'll put it up, that has a really amazing article by Ringo Starr. And he's like, here's what I witnessed, here's what I observed. And you just start thinking, wow, back on that drum set, man, that takes a certain kind of talent just to put up with all that drama, but then it would be neat to kind of connect, sort of like Forrest Gump,
Okay.
like a Forrest Gump of every Beatles iconic, shared consciousness type memory that, the focus groups will figure out who will pay. You know what I mean, Richard? And then, boom, animation. But yeah, I disagree with you because think of all the Beatles movies like Yellow Submarine. There's another one I think that's cartoon. So, it'd just be a cartoon. It doesn't have to be like that kind of cartoon. I was thinking more Inside Out 2 style.
Sure.
But boy, that would be a fun one. So see what you can do on AI, brother. I can't wait.
Well, paying for the rights to all the Beatles songs, that's going to be a little bit of an expense as well as the animation. So we'll have to find a fat wallet for that.
But if Disney does it,
yes, they've got cash.
yeah,
They've got
they have a
cash.
secret checkbook for royalty stuff.
Well, mine is a story that's comes after Animals Cross the Rainbow Bridge, where in essence the spirit, if you want to call it a ghost, of pets kind of occupy the space of their owners, especially children, to help them comfort them while they are dealing with the grief of losing their pets. It sounds awfully sad, and you'd need definitely somebody with a good touch from probably early Pixar films to be able to write this and get it to work correctly. Because adults, they never get over their grief. But kids, they do get over the grief of losing a pet. At least I've found that to be true. I feel, I miss the pets that I lost when I was a kid, but I don't remember being nearly as traumatized as I was when I was older and lost a pet. It was very tough for me. And of course, all of the pets, the main pet that is helping the kids is Butch, who is a miniature dachshund, long-haired dachshund. He's based on my own pet. He'd be incredibly adorable on screen as an animated character. And like I said, he'd be the spirit, and they help the kids get over the grief, but they don't do as well with the adults, which is why adults feel the grief more than the kids do in the long run. And by the way, the title of the movie is Good Grief.
Wow.
But
I'm going to send this to somebody I know in Hollywood. I'm serious. Because I can't believe that this has not been done yet, because I've heard of that Rainbow Bridge. Is that like a thing? The Rainbow Bridge?
The Rainbow Bridge is a metaphor that has been come up for people who are grieving for their pets, thinking about that dogs cross the Rainbow Bridge. That's how they get to heaven, and they're waiting for you on the other side, or whatever pet it is that you have. And someday you'll be reunited with them. That's the hopeful thought. That's the positive way of looking at it. We all know how tough it is to lose a companion like that, and so it's a comforting thing that has existed. There's a long poem that goes with it. You can look it up online. It's easy to find. It's hard to get through though if you've ever lost a pet, because you'll find yourself tearing up at the whole prospect of it. And over the years, like I said, when I was a kid, I miss the animals that I had as a kid, but I don't miss them the same way that I miss the animals that I had as an adult. The animals that I had as an adult, when I lost them, it was like I still can't get over it. So I think, like I said, I think there's an idea that there's a spirit of the animals that helps kids get through this, but they don't. For some reason, there's a barrier with the adults. Maybe the adults are blocked off from the spirit or something like that. I have to work out my pitch a little bit more. You guys are much more thorough.
You don't have
this.
to work anything out. Just use AI to capture the words you just said and send them to producers, man. That one is a great idea. And like I said, I can't believe, I keep thinking in my head, what's the Fievel movie? American Tail. I keep thinking of American Tail and a bridge, and just that kind of animation, the Don Bluth stuff.
Well, there was All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
That's the same kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But yours is different. Yours is beyond that. I like that.
I like it, too.
Well, thank you. And you know what? And I like all of you guys being here for the show this week. I'm sorry that Damien got a little displaced, but we got him on the show and we got his thoughts, thankfully, here at the end.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody, but before we go, I want to give you a chance to promote anything that you think people should turn their eyes and ears to. So, Damien, I know that you've got your YouTube channel and your podcast, so why don't you tell us what it is that you want people to be looking at?
Yeah, Riley on Film has been my home for, maybe a decade, but it's changing, and I'm changing it to my new, it's a threefer creative project. It's a podcast, like read aloud of my novel, which I just finished writing. I haven't done the read aloud yet. Probably going to finish it today and tomorrow. My kids asked me, what do you want for Father's Day? I said, just bring me food because I'm doing my audiobook all day. But anyway, so it's called Zen y la Fermata. And it's like I said, it's a threefer. It's an album which is already out on YouTube and YouTube Music exclusively. Just look up Zen y la Fermata with E. It's Spanish Y. So Zen y la Fermata. And you'll find the album, and I'm very pleased with it. I'm going to take a long break because it went insane, and just it's hard making an album, but it's done. It's in the can, we call it, in journalism, in the can. Not the trash can, it's just a term meaning done. So yeah, so stop by Riley on Film, and I'm actually changing the name of my website gradually to Zen y la Fermata, but right now it's just RileyOnFilm.com. And I'm really excited. So those are the three modalities for this art project. It's the biggest thing I've ever done. I'm really excited about it. I'm getting a lot of good feedback. I sent one to Gwen Stefani, who's my personal friend, and she's actually talking to me about making a cartoon of it. So I'm thinking about doing a cartoon. So I've already made one cartoon. You'll see it over there. It's called Zen y la Fermata, also a fourth modality. But it's really cute, and it's Zen is like me, he's the guy, and Fermata is the female from Mexico that I used to rent a room from when I studied Spanish down there years back, 1996. Summer of 96, I lived down there, so it's kind of pulls from that a lot, and Fermata is really cute. So, yeah, Zen y la Fermata, it's just going off over at RileyOnFilm.com. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and good luck with that project. That sounds like it'll be very interesting. Rachel, how about you? You got something that you want us to turn our eyes and ears to?
I'm very, very busy as usual. I did do an episode of the movie show on KSL, which was very exciting for me, on Inside Out too. So if you go to their website, you can see my first one of my first time hosting that radio program. So that was really cool. But also I have the Hallmarkies podcast. We're going to be going into Christmas in July is going to be starting before we know it, so that's going to be really fun. We're covering all the Hallmark content, and then I have Rachel's reviews, and we had a whole episode of that we did, my friend and I, on Inside Out, a deep dive Talking Disney episode. Just lots of fun stuff over there, and also you can read my written review, rachelsreviews.net, so yeah.
Lots of things to look at, lots of things to listen
busy.
to.
Yeah,
keeping yourself busy. I know that because I'm pretty busy myself these days. Nicole, what have you got that we can look for?
I am actually soliciting questions right now for an interview that I'm planning on doing with a therapist who specializes in suicide prevention and domestic violence against men. something that isn't really talked about a lot, and also just trauma in general. And I didn't realize it until just this moment, but I think I'm going to ask her about Inside Out and what she thought about the movie. But I don't want to ask her, I don't want to be ask her like generic questions. So I actually hosted a party last month based on a book, and solicited some questions there. I think I have like 2 or 3 questions, but I would like some more. So if anyone has any burning questions, if you need help with your life, if you have a dramatic situation that you need assistance dealing with, if you have any questions, send them to me through the contact form on my blog. And I'm trying to figure out a way to like incorporate movies into the subject matter by pursuing, like, by asking her maybe if there were some movies that she thought did a good job at helping resolve certain certain matters as it relates to traumatic experiences, or suicide, or domestic violence, or what have you.
So is this a short film that you're going to be doing with this interview?
I'm glad you asked, Richard. It's going to be used as a segment for my TV show that airs in the Philadelphia area, and I also plan on uploading it to my YouTube channel, since I haven't been utilizing that channel in recent years. The conversation is most likely going to run longer than the allotted time that I have for the TV show, so I'll probably have to upload the whole thing onto YouTube.
Very good. Very good. Well, as usual, I'm trying to keep up with all the things that I see in a theater. You know, the motto on my site is, if I saw it in a theater, you'll read about it here, unless, of course, I fall behind, which I've had the opportunity to do because I've been seeing so many things lately. Lots of revisits for older films. I mentioned I saw Alice in Wonderland yesterday. We're going to see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade today. I've got a bucket load of things coming up in the not too distant future. So the Paramount Theater Summer Classic Film Series is, I think I may create a separate page for all of those films that I see there on my blog site. Also, once again, I ask people to check out the YouTube channel for the Lambcast. I've now added branding spot in the videos, so you can click on and subscribe if you're watching a video and want to subscribe. It's easy to do. All you have to do is click the subscribe button there, which I haven't had before, but now I'm hoping that that'll add a few more subscribers to our channel so that people will be able to enjoy our conversations on a weekly basis, visually as well as auditorially. So that's what we're doing. I want to thank everybody who spent some time with us this week. I hope you enjoyed Inside Out too. I know that we felt positively about it generally, although I'm a little anxious about how it's going to appear when the podcast goes up. But that's okay. I've got my butterflies in a row. It'll all be great.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.
It's over!